Hey, so this is a make it video to make a piece with the monk's belt pattern bar. And I have in front of me this piece that we are going to make. So I'm going to be making this piece with 4 different types of yarn, 2 thick and fluffy, and 2 thinner, I should say. I've got these 2 colors for the thinner and these 2 colors for the fluffy. But you should feel free to pick whatever works for you. Then I've got the warp yarn, and I've also got the tools I'm going to need. We're going to be using the monk's belt pattern bar, scissors. I've got my shuttle style longer needles. I'm going to need 2 of these. These needles are useful at the end for weaving in any loose ends. You'll see me use this. This is a prototype needle I've been working on that works nicely with this loom. I also am going to be using my little comb and, of course, the loom. This is a simple monk's belt. It uses mostly these strong, thin verticals, and then I've used a couple of these of the other. You can see how it looks on the other side is really awesome also. It's the exact opposite of what it is on this side. Super beefy, nice piece of fabric for a sample. Okay, let's get started. This video presumes that you have watched, at the minimum, our getting started quick overview video. So you know how to warp your loom, insert the pattern bar, and you know about the floating selvage. This video also presumes that you have watched the monk's belt pattern bar videos. I think there are 2. There's like an overview, and then there's the longer version. So as you know from watching that video, the monk's belt pattern bar makes plain weave with positions 1 and 3, and it makes the monk's belt patterns with positions 2 and 4. So what's cool about that is that I like to start my pieces by putting a few plain weave rows on, and the monk's belt pattern bar allows you to do that. You could also do it with the plain weave pattern bar, but you might as well just start with the monk's belt. And the only thing you have to remember about that is that the plain weave on the monk's belt pattern bar has a floating selvage, and that's fine. You just do it in the way that you know how to use, which is go under it on the way in and over it on the way out. I'm starting with black. I will put some instructions underneath for what colors. I think I'm going to use 4 or 5 colors for this, but you can use similar colors. You can use completely different colors. This video is just going to give you some basic structure for the pattern, and then you can use your own choices for the colors. You can also use your own choices for the pattern. That's up to you. All right, so let's get a few rows in with plain weave at the bottom. So I'm just going to go between 1 and 3. Okay, so that's 6 rows of plain weave, and that's using the 1 and the 3 positions. Right, so now I'm going to start using the monk's belt pattern, and I think I will use the 4 pattern to start. So if you remember, we do that with the alternating with the plain weave, and I'll keep the plain weave going in black. I don't think I need too long of a section. I'm just going to do a few rows with it. So I'm going to start with 4. I'm going to go under on the way in, over on the way out. All right, I think I'm on 1. I'm going to come back. with the plain weave, and then I'm going to go back to 4. So basically I'm going to weave the monk's belt pattern for a few rows, say 4, 3 or 4 probably, 3 or 4 monk's belt rows, alternating with the plain weave. So that was a 1 plain weave, and I'm going to go to the 3. Back to the 4 monk's belt row. That looks nice. I think I'm going to do a couple more monk's belt rows because I would like there to be about an inch here of this pattern. Plain weave row. Monk's belt row. Plain weave row. Okay, so I'm going to switch over next with to the red for the monk's belt pattern, and so I'm going to finish this here. And I told you that what I'm starting to do is just weave it in and out, like a little bit of plain weave at the end. And that takes care of that end a little more easily, I've found, than doing it later. Okay, let's use the red now. I'm only going to do 1 row of the red, and I'm going to do it with the 2. And I'm not even going to put it on a needle, just because I want to show you that it can be done this way. Again, I went under the floating selvage on the way in, over on the way out. Okay, and then I'm going to do a little bit of plain weave at the end. Let's do it at this end too. All right, 1 more plain weave row. In black. Okay, for the next center section of plain weave, I'm going to use this kind of dusky sage, and I have wound it on, these are actually some prototypes of a shuttle needle that I'm developing. I happen to have one on hand here, so that's what I'm going to use. All right, so what I've got so far is I've switched over my plain weave to this sage color. So that's alternating 1 and 3. And then in between every plain weave row I do one of the monk's belt, and this is the 4 monk's belt, where you see these little skinny gaps here, and that makes these little skinny stripes. So I'm just gonna truck on up the warp doing this for a little while, and then I will rejoin you in a few inches. I'll do the first. I'll do a couple more so you can watch. Looks like it's time for our monk's belt piece. Under on the way in, over on the way out. And then the plain weave, and the plain weave we are on 1. And 1 more back again to the, is it the 4? Yep. Keeping that green shuttle on edge, that helps. Oops, I didn't leave myself quite enough to go through. Before you enter a row, just make sure you have enough loose to form that row, unlike what I just did there. Otherwise you get into a little bit of a bind. And then 1 more plain weave, and then I'll start going. Is that correct? Looks correct. Okay, so I've gotten this far. That looks pretty cool. And I think since my fluffy aqua piece ran out, I'm just going to start continuing with keeping the plain weave background and changing these 2 stripes, keeping them the same stripes, but turning them into red. Okay, let me get started on that and show you. All right, so you can see that I've just switched over the monk's belt pattern, which is position 4, from this fluffy aqua to this fluffy red. And when I started it, I had ended the aqua over here and doubled it back. So then I just started the fluffy red from this side, so that when I doubled back this section, there wouldn't be 2 doubled back sections in a row and make it bumpy. That's not absolutely necessary, but you can do that if you want. And then I just did exactly the same thing as before, where I'm doing plain weave, and in between every plain weave, I'm doing a monk's belt row. All right, I'm going to do a couple more so you can see. And we're in position 3 of plain weave. So I'm doing plain weave in the sage, fluffy red, in the 4, plain weave, the other plain weave in the sage, monk's belt in the red. All right, you guys can see how that is working, right? All right, I'm going to do another 1.5 inches or 2 inches of that. All right. So maybe this isn't exactly double this length, but it's pretty close, and I've run out of yarn, so I'm good with that. So now I'm going to double it back in a plain weave, in and out, just to secure that end. And I'm going to go another row of plain weave. Then I think I'm going to do the opposite of what I did down here to kind of wrap it up. And I think I'm going to do it a little bit longer than I did here, because we still have a little bit of ways to go. So like before, I'm going to do my single row just by hand, because I don't want to spend time putting it on the needle, and I don't think it's necessary. And then I'm going to double it back with a plain weave to capture the end. And on this side too. Now, I have a lot on this needle and I could keep going, but I also have some black. I kind of like how the black is looking, and I'm going to start the black. Okay, I'll start on this side. Now, for my next rows, I'm going to keep going with the red. So I'm doing the reverse of what I did here, where I did a red puffy row and then aqua puffy rows on a black background. And so here I've done an aqua puffy row, and then I'm going to do red skinny stripes on a black plain weave background. So let me get my red loaded up on my shuttle needle. All right, so skinny stripes again. And the black background. Plain weave. Monk's belt. And a plain weave background. Now down at the bottom, I repeated, this is the motif I'm doing, right? Except with red instead of the aqua. And it looks like I repeated that 5 times down here, and I've got 3 here. I feel like I've got more, so I'm just going to make it a little longer. What I would like to do for you is kind of give you the building blocks. Since that's the way my brain works, I understand that some people work better with patterns. Like, I completely get that. And This looks cool. So I've done 4 rows here, and the equivalent section is 5 rows. I think I'm going to make this go longer because I have a little more room to fill. I think the important thing to know is that all of these things are building blocks for you, and I think it's great to experiment because your eye starts to learn what it likes. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, I ran out of red, so now I'm just going back and forth between my plane weave settings, and I am, didn't leave quite enough tail for that one. I am going to run out my black. All right, I finished my black plain weave, and I wove the end under here at the end to kind of secure it. I'm gonna pop out my pattern bar. If I wanted, I could do some more plain weave there, but I think I'm good. What is this, we ask? Well, I think this is going to be a coaster. Huge coaster fan here. Literally have these giant coasters all over my house. You don't even have to aim. You just kind of like set down your cup in the general vicinity. Impress your friends. You know that for the end, I like to do an overhand knot and kind of snug it down like that. And then I'll make sure that any of my pieces are woven in that I've forgotten. I'll flip it over and trim it closely at the back. That's cool. It's got kind of a Scandi modernist vibe, but also sort of weirdly a tiny bit Christmassy. Okay. Thanks for watching.